Nobody ever really paid attention to the Block C cafeteria after 1998. Not since the incident. The place still functioned, still served meals to the night shift workers at Eastview Psychiatric Hospital. But the regulars, janitors, orderlies, and guards treated the place like a ticking clock. You went in, ate quick, and got the hell out. I'd heard the rumours. Everyone had. A cook who went mad and boiled his own hand. A patient who slipped in unnoticed, only to be found eating raw meat in the pantry. But I didn't believe in ghost stories. I was 42, not 14. I'd done graveyard shifts in morgues, forensic storage rooms, even a maximum security wing for violent psychotics. None of it fazed me. Still, when I was transferred there for night maintenance duty, something about that cafeteria made my stomach twist. It wasn't the smell, although there was a faint metallic undertone, like rusted copper beneath the steam of mashed potatoes and gravy. It was the silence, a thick, oppressive silence that wrapped around the room, even when it was filled with the clatter of trays. It made conversations hush mid-sentence, made people forget what they were saying. And the lights, they always flickered near the pantry door. Always. It didn't matter if it had been fixed the day before. The bulb would twitch and dim as if responding to something none of us could see. The first time I stepped into Block C's cafeteria for my shift, the air felt heavier, not in a dramatic, haunted movie kind of way. More like the weight of a room that had seen too much and was trying to forget. Sheila, the night supervisor, handed me a checklist. Stay out of the freezer unless absolutely necessary, she warned casually, then added, and if you hear knocking, ignore it. I blinked at her. Come again? She leaned in, her voice low and dry. It's probably the pipes, she said, but her eyes told a different story. They darted to the side, toward the freezer like a reflex. Her hand, I noticed, trembled slightly as she passed me the keys. I forced a laugh. You're joking, right? She didn't laugh back. That alone made me uneasy. I took the keys and went in. It was colder than it should have been, even for a cafeteria attached to a massive psychiatric facility. That night, around 2:30 a.m., I was sweeping near the back door when I heard it. 3 slow knocks. Not frantic, not accidental, deliberate. I stopped mid-sweep, every muscle in my body tightening. My brain scrambled to rationalize it. Old pipes, thermal expansion, maybe even an animal. But it wasn't random. It was steady, rhythmic, and disturbingly polite. 3 even taps, like a guest at a door. I edged closer to the freezer, my boots creaking on the old linoleum tiles. The knocks came again, louder this time, as if whoever or whatever was inside had grown impatient. My fingers hovered over the latch, but something inside me, some primal thread of self-preservation, screamed to back away. I did. Fast. I didn't report it. Not yet. Instead, I told Marcus, one of the older security guards. He was ex-military, tough as nails, and not easily spooked. When I described the knocks, his jaw clenched. Happens every year. Around now, he said. I waited. Why? He exhaled slowly, looked me dead in the eyes. 1998, November. They found 3 patients locked in that freezer. Dead. Nobody knew how they got in. The door locks from the outside. So what? Someone murdered them? He hesitated. Some say they were lured in. By who? Not who, he whispered. What? The next few nights, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The kind of cold, calculated gaze you feel when someone is just behind you. I'd be mopping the far end of the room, and suddenly, I'd glance at the reflection in the stainless steel counter, only to see a figure standing by the pantry door. But every time I turned around, no one was there. The worst part, I stopped questioning it. It started to feel normal. Then came the utensils. Spoons went missing, then knives. Forks turned up in odd places, under the vending machines, stuck into ceiling tiles. One night, I found a meat cleaver sitting perfectly centered on my mop bucket. No prints, no explanation. I nearly quit then and there, but something kept me anchored. Maybe it was the need for answers. Maybe it was plain stupidity, but I stayed. It was a Wednesday when things truly shifted. Around 3 a.m., the intercom system crackled, static at first, then a whisper. Not male, not adult. A small voice, too young to belong in that building, said one word. Hungry. The sound slithered down my spine like ice water. I dropped the mop, heart thudding. The system hadn't worked in years. Everyone knew that. I radioed Marcus. You hear that? Static on the other end. Then his voice. Get out of there now. What the hell's going on? You're hearing her. Her who? The girl, the youngest one. She wasn't supposed to be admitted here. 9 years old, no files, no discharge, just disappeared. I didn't return to the cafeteria that night. I sat in the break room, lights on, hands trembling. The next shift, I tried to shake it off. Brought my thermos, plugged in my headphones, did my rounds. I didn't go near the pantry. I didn't even glance at the freezer. Around 2:50 a.m., the lights flickered violently, then went dark. Total blackout. Emergency lights kicked in. Faint red glows casting long, jagged shadows across the walls. And then, screaming, a man's voice. Long, guttural, and full of terror. I ran toward it, heart racing. I expected to find a co-worker hurt, maybe trapped. But when I burst into the cafeteria, it was empty. Silent. Every chair was turned to face the freezer. All 36 of them, perfectly aligned. I backed out, legs numb. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because I couldn't stop hearing that scream. It echoed in my ears like it was etched into the walls of my skull. 3 days later, Tony the cook quit without notice. Sheila found him in the pantry, sobbing, scratching at his arms. He kept repeating, "She fed me something, it had bones." They had to sedate him. He's been in psychiatric care ever since. That same night, I got a message, not on my phone, not on paper, but smeared in gravy on the inside of a serving tray. "You're next." I took it to Sheila. She paled. "Clean it, burn the tray, don't speak about it again." I didn't argue. My final shift was Friday. I'd already drafted my transfer request. I just needed to survive one last night. I went in early, double-checked every room, turned on every light. At exactly 2:34 a.m., I heard the door creak. The cafeteria entrance slowly opened. No one came in. I stepped back. My breath caught in my throat. In the reflection of the freezer, I saw her. A small girl. Pale skin. White hospital gown soaked at the hem. Her eyes, they weren't eyes. Just hollow, endless voids. She smiled, and behind her, figures. Dozens, crawling on the ceiling, hanging upside down, writhing, twisting, staring. I ran. I left my gear behind, left my badge, my keys. I didn't stop until I was in my car. I didn't speak for days. When HR called, I said I was sick. They didn't argue. Maybe they knew. Maybe they had heard the knocks too. A week later, I got a package at home. No return address. Inside, a cafeteria tray from Block C with my name scratched into it. Deep, messy, and a note in thick black ink. You still owe us one more meal. Nobody ever really liked the basement cafeteria at Dunswell Technical Institute. It wasn't just the flickering fluorescent lights, the paint peeling like old sunburnt skin, or the fact that it was windowless. It was something else. An unsettling stillness that lingered even when it was packed with students during lunch hour. The air felt heavy. The smell always slightly off. Not rotten, not chemical, just wrong. Walter Green, a janitor nearing retirement, had worked there for over 30 years. He had mopped every hallway, cleaned every toilet, and yes, bleached every greasy tile of that cafeteria. But even he wouldn't enter it at night. "It's just the pipes," he used to mutter when asked why he always skipped the lower level on his night shifts, but his eyes would always flicker just slightly when he said it. On January the 9th, 2002, the complaints about the cafeteria food reached a strange new level. Several students reported nausea, even though the meals had passed health inspections. One student claimed the soup tasted like something dead. Another refused to eat anything that wasn't pre-packaged. Still, there was nothing health officials could prove. But the buzz had started. Faculty members whispered among themselves. Mrs. Langley, who managed the cafeteria's budget, once said she felt her chair shift while she was going over inventory. "Like something moved under the floor," she told the vice principal. They both laughed nervously. Neither laughed again when a student disappeared the following week. Elliot Marson, 19, majoring in mechanical engineering, was last seen walking down the hallway toward the cafeteria for an evening snack. It was around 7:45 p.m, a time when only the vending machines and microwaves were in use. Security footage captured him swiping his card at the cafeteria entrance, and then nothing. No exit, no return, just gone. The footage was reviewed dozens of times. The audio caught something faint, barely audible, a strange, dragging sound followed by what sounded like a whisper. When the footage was enhanced, a clearer phrase emerged: "Stay hungry." Authorities searched the entire basement level. No trace of Elliot, no forced doors, no tampered locks, just his ID card found lying face up by the vending machine. A week after Elliot's disappearance, the cafeteria shut down for renovations. Officially, it was due to mold beneath the floorboards. Unofficially, nobody wanted to talk about what the maintenance crew found under the tiles. One worker quit on the spot and refused to describe what he had seen. Another had to be sedated after a breakdown. Only Walter Green remained. It was Walter who finally spoke, one foggy Friday evening, to a teacher named Miss Kendra Lowe. They sat alone in the staff lounge as rain tapped against the windows like tiny fingernails. "They built it over the old hospital wing," he said, voice low. "Did you know that?" Kendra shook her head. "They buried parts of the old morgue right beneath the kitchen, never cleared it out proper." She asked him why he never told anyone. He just looked at her and whispered, "Because they don't stay buried, not down there." Rumors surged across campus. Some students swore they heard footsteps behind them when walking past the cafeteria at night. One girl said she saw someone inside through the glass doors, except the lights were off and the place was locked. Another boy fainted after claiming a pair of hands reached out from the floor tiles. Security was doubled, but even the guards didn't want to patrol the basement. Then came the second disappearance. A security guard named Ben Foster was found unconscious in the walk-in freezer. His skin was blue, lips cracked. He kept repeating the same phrase, "They fed me." When he finally came to, he described falling through the floor, except there was no hole. He described mouths, many mouths, whispering in unison, and he described seeing Elliot. He was smiling, Ben said, eyes wide and unfocused, but he had no eyes, just sockets, like they'd eaten even that. The school was shut down for investigation. Walter disappeared during the second inspection. His keys were found at the cafeteria entrance, and his mop sat in a pool of dirty water, red-tinted. That was when Ms. Lowe contacted a journalist she trusted. The story never aired. The reporter, Jeremy Stone, vanished 2 days later after visiting the school's archives. His notes were later found scattered near the boiler room. Inside those notes was a single page with handwritten phrases, scrawled and panicked. They feed on emptiness. The floor is a mouth. Heat opens the passage. No one ever leaves hungry. 5 years later, the school reopened under a new name. The cafeteria was permanently sealed, covered with steel flooring. But students still avoid that side of the building. Every so often, someone hears the sound of a tray falling, a microwave dinging, footsteps echoing from beneath. Once, during a fire drill, a teacher swore she saw someone behind the cafeteria glass. A boy, with an ID card hanging from his neck. Today, the staff lounge still keeps Walter's old mop, leaning against a wall. No one knows why. Maybe it's respect, maybe it's fear. But late at night, when the cleaning crews finish their shifts, they always double-check the basement lights. Not to turn them off, but to make sure they're still on. Because if they ever go out, just for a second, you might hear a voice too, saying, "Stay hungry." It started with a smell, not the usual cafeteria mix of burnt oil and cheap tomato sauce, but something different, something sweet and rotting at the same time. Melissa noted it the moment she stepped into the staff cafeteria that Thursday afternoon. She stood still at the doorway for a moment, holding her plastic tray, her brows furrowing. "Do you smell that?" she asked Julia, the admin from HR. Julia paused mid-step, sniffed, then chuckled nervously. "Smells like someone left their lunch in the microwave too long." But Melissa wasn't convinced. It smelled almost warm, like decomposing fruit mixed with boiled meat. She shrugged it off, choosing the far table near the window where the sun always made the cheap linoleum floor glow yellow. She never ate in the cafeteria before 2 p.m. That day, she regretted breaking the routine. Melissa noticed it again the next day. The smell, stronger, as if it were clinging to the plastic trays. Worse, there was an empty chair. The chair. The one always taken by Sam, the building technician. Sam was never late for lunch. Never. And he always brought his homemade chili in the same dented metal flask. But that Friday, Sam's chair sat cold and untouched. A few co-workers whispered he had called in sick, but when Melissa passed by the service elevator on her way back to her office, she noticed his toolbox still tucked into the corner. His gloves too, just resting there like he had put them down to wash his hands, and never came back. She told herself it was just a coincidence, but that smell clung to her nostrils like mold. By Monday, the cafeteria was quieter. Melissa pushed her tray down the line, not even hungry. The mashed potatoes looked grayer than usual, and the roast beef had a wet shimmer that made her stomach turn. Still, she took a small portion, just enough not to look suspicious. She sat again by the window, out of habit. When she lifted her fork for the first bite, she froze. There was a chunk missing, a bite already taken. Not a break, not a smear from serving. A clean, moist half-circle gouged into the meat, like someone had taken a literal bite. She looked around, expecting someone to jump out and laugh. Nothing. No cameras, no prank. Just the sound of soft chewing from the far corner. But when she turned her head, no one was there. Melissa had had enough. She approached the lunch lady, Maria, who'd been serving there since before the remodel in 2009. Maria looked tired, pale. Her apron was stained in places Melissa didn't want to think about. "Who made the beef today?" Melissa asked. Her voice was low, cautious. Maria didn't answer at first. She just kept scooping peas into the next tray. Then, without looking up, she said, "We didn't cook beef today." Melissa stared at her. "It's right there." Maria stopped. Finally, she met her eyes, and her expression changed from blank to terrified. "I said we didn't cook beef today." That night, Melissa broke into the cafeteria's back kitchen. She didn't have clearance, but she still had her old badge from her summer internship years ago. To her surprise, it worked. She slipped past the racks of expired soda, the silent freezers humming against the walls, and toward the walk-in meat locker. Inside, she found trays. Not storage trays, cafeteria trays, lined and stacked with half-eaten portions. Some had teeth marks, some had fingerprints pressed into the gravy, and in the farthest corner, wrapped in transparent film, was a shoe. Just one, caked in something dry and black. She turned and vomited into a bucket near the door. Tuesday morning, the email started. "Anyone seen Julia?" one said. "Security check-in discrepancy? Sam's ID still logging movement." Another. Melissa felt a cold spike run through her spine. She went to HR. Julia's desk was clean, as if she'd never worked there. No sticky notes, no photos, just the hum of the computer screen flashing "login failed." By lunchtime, 3 more employees had called in sick. 2 had families showing up at reception, asking if they were inside. Security checked cameras. The footage glitched during cafeteria hours, every time, from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. Static, then sudden cuts to empty trays being collected by unseen hands. That afternoon, Melissa didn't go to her office. She waited, stood in line with the others, tray in hand. But instead of sitting, she walked behind the counter when Maria turned her back. She followed the kitchen corridor until she found a door she hadn't noticed before. No label, just grey metal. Inside, the walls were tiled in beige. A long table stood at the centre. On it, a single tray with something steaming under a silver lid. She lifted it. What she saw made her knees buckle. It was an ear, human, partially chewed. A clean fork and knife rested neatly beside it. Melissa ran. She didn't even remember how she got outside, or how long she was crouched by the back alley stairs crying into her coat. The next day, the cafeteria was closed for maintenance. The staff got boxed sandwiches from a catering company. No one asked why. 1 week later, she received an unmarked envelope in her home mailbox. Inside was a cafeteria tray. Clean, empty, but it smelled. That smell, sickeningly sweet and rotting. She didn't open her door that night. She didn't sleep. She quit her job the next morning and never looked back. But sometimes, when she walked by dumpsters or heating vents in winter, she still caught that smell.